The first thing we're going to be talking about today, and again, we're not talking theory anymore, we're talking about best practices that you can apply right away, and you're going to notice a lot of what we're going to be talking about today in some of the websites that you use on a daily basis. So what is chunking, right? We've all encountered different kind of digits, numbers that we had to memorize, for example, like our phone number, or perhaps if you want to send money to someone's bank account, you need the IBAN. These kind of numbers are hard to perceive at first. What do we do to make them more perceivable? We chunk them. We break them into pieces to make them more perceivable to aid the comprehension, basically. And the same with software. This is a screenshot from Stripe. It's a payment gateway that also allows you to create products and sell products online. Stripe, every time you want to create a new product, it asks you for just 16 things about your product. These 16 things you'll have to fill out in order for Stripe to publish your product. However, when you go to that page and you want to fill in the details, it doesn't really seem a lot, because Stripe said instead of telling the user you have to fill out these 16 fields, we'll only tell you you'll have to fill out these 3 sections, which is basically, and I can't really see much at the moment, but the 3 different options have to do with the product details, the shipping, I believe, and whatever you can see at the end. So yeah, so instead of the user going to that page and really thinking that they have to fill out a lot and they're going to spend a lot of time on this page filling out so many details, Stripe tells you, hey, as soon as you enter the page, we only need these 3 parts from you, and it's more digestible. It's easier to perceive. So, in contrast, if you have a form like this, as soon as the user enters the page, they are overwhelmed. They don't know what kind of information to expect to fill in later, because they're going to start with the first field. They think it's too much to fill, and especially if you have even more. Like, this is complex, but imagine having more and more, and especially if you're building a comprehensive website, this is not your ideal way of displaying the fields. Amazon, for example, and take this as an example every time you want to design a form or a website or even a page, chunk the data. Because Stripe, for example, they did a study and they realized that showing the users 3 big chunks is better than showing the user 16 smaller chunks. And this is the same. Amazon here is showing you, because they want to take your money, right? They don't want you to get overwhelmed and just start filling out the form and then end up leaving the page. They won't tell you it's easy. Just fill out your details, your payment details, and off you go. And it's not only when it comes to forms, it comes to UI design in general. This is the Google Analytics page. And as you can see, there are so many statistics and things that you can know about your website. And imagine if it was displayed in a different UI. It would have been quite hectic to understand what's going on. But because Google chunked the data into separate boxes, it makes it easier to digest, to perceive, and to actually know what's happening just from looking at it for a couple of seconds. And again, you will see it even when you use your iPhone. Have you ever wondered why there are some gaps between the fields? It's because Apple wants to make it easier for you to find the settings that you're trying to reach in the best time possible. They're grouping them into separate blocks. So chunking, quite important. Again, chunking assesses short-term memory because we have so much going on in our mind, and if you want to have to figure out every single UI, every single time you go to a website, trust me, nobody likes that. You barely have, again, 20 or 30% of the attention span of the user, which also aids scalability and aids comprehension. Alignment. When you design your website and you have the sections ordered in a neat way, this aids the comprehension and this makes the interface more ordered, let's say, and it's easier to digest it. And when you do that, you don't only better the user experience, but you also tell the user what they need to do and how fast they can do it and where's the light at the end of the tunnel. So what do I mean by that? This is a website for basically booking a session, I believe, to Santa's Village. So as soon as you go to that website, the vast majority of the users will be doing the following. They will start filling out the name, and then they will go to the address, then they will go to choosing a password, then they will go again to filling out who's attending and so on. So you just went down, you went up again, then you went down to continue the fields, then you're ticking that box, then you're ticking that box, then you just completed your booking process. This is a mess, right? But guess what? This is not what the website wants you to do. They actually want you to fill out your name, go select how many people are coming, then go back to the left, fill out the text box, then go to the right, then to the left, and so on, until you check these boxes, and then you go. And this is even worse. But because there's lack of UX design, obviously, they did not really make it easier for users to know which direction they should be going to. Wouldn't it be easier if they just made it a simple alignment for their form, in which you just have to go from top to bottom, each field is complementing the one next to it, and they got rid of all of the unnecessary fields. This is cleaner and easier to digest, and you're able to see the light at the end of the tunnel right away. This is actually one of the most interesting slides today. This is the voting ballot for the 2000 US elections, and this form is thought to be the reason why we had the Iraq War, the war on terrorists, is the reason why we had George Bush in the modern era. And why this happened? So I will probably need my glasses for this one, so one sec. And I'm not sure where they are. Have you seen my glasses? All right, no worries. So, well, we have Al Gore, which is Democratic, and we have George Bush representing the Republicans. This is in Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County was thought at that time, whoever gets Palm Beach County actually gets Florida, and whoever gets Florida wins the elections. And in Palm Beach County, since 1993, they were voting for Democrats in every single year, right? However, when this happened, most people were confused. They noticed that the people that were trying to vote for Al Gore, which is the usual favorite option for that county, they were actually voting for Pat Bushman. Why? Because when they had these buttons that they had to push in order to vote, most people thought that the second button meant that they're voting for Al Gore. And once they did that, they noticed that there are unusual amount of votes that are going to the Reform group and not to Al Gore, which eventually ended up with George Bush getting the 2000 elections. And you might think it's quite silly, but actually there's a lot of controversies around this, whether this was on purpose, or was it just a silly mistake that actually led to this huge impact on our modern era. So yeah, that's how important alignment is. So would it be easier if they just basically did the simple change? A simple, straightforward form. The alignment is quite clear. If you want to vote for this person, push that button. There are no confusions in that one, but when you look at this one, you'll have to figure out what's happening before you actually make an action. And you don't want that to happen on your website or app or whatever. So alignment, it makes the interfaces more orderly, and more orderly interfaces, it's easier for user to comprehend, to use, and of course it leads the user through the interface. It tells the user that you should start here, and that's where you should go. It doesn't leave room for guessing. Label alignment. One of the most common questions in web design: where should I place my labels, my input labels? Shall I put them on the left and align them all under each other away from the input fields, or shall I get them closer to the input fields? The answer is neither. Studies have shown that the best place for putting your labels is on the top of the input field or the select box. Why? Google has done some research, and this eye tracking study has shown that people spend more time and more effort and more mental effort basically to go from one label to the text field next to it back and forth. So making them all symmetrical, going from the top, you put the label name, then the field, then the label, then the field. It really guides the user through the design, and it makes it easier for them to fill out the form or do the action that they need to do. And even on mobile, it fits perfectly for mobile screens. If you put them next to each other and your website is not quite responsive, the mobile users that have to go to the right and left and fill out the forms, and I'm pretty sure you've encountered some not very responsive websites where you have to zoom out, zoom in, and click on the text field in order to complete the form. But when you have them all under each other, it's just perfect for mobile already. Some people, they say, well, we should use placeholders. We've seen or used placeholders before, yeah? So, while this can be a good suggestion, this is not really why placeholders are there. Placeholders are not there to tell you what you should type in this field. They should tell you about the type of data you should input in this field. For example, they should guide you that if you're writing your email, it should be example@example.com, right? Or if you're writing, for example, your date of birth, it should give you the actual, the type of input that you want. Why this is not perfect? Because it's really difficult to check work after you fill it out. Imagine if you're filling out a long form and you've just entered all of your information, and now you want to check your work again. Well, I don't even know what this field is for anymore, because I've entered my data and the placeholder is gone. So how am I able to check what did I write for this part or that part? You might think this is actually quite easy for short forms, and it actually is. But when you have longer forms, it's not ideal. It also makes it easier to correct errors, as we said, and it requires more mental effort to remember what each input is about. Call to actions. Who knows what's a call to action? A CTA. Has anybody heard of call to actions before? No? So every single screen on your interface should have a purpose, right? And we talked about this in the first two sessions. And if your screen doesn't have a purpose, it shouldn't exist, of course. And if that purpose is for the user to take an action on your page or screen, then the call to action comes to guide the user how to do that. So call to actions, in other words, they can be buttons, they can be hyperlinks on your website, visible elements that guide the user what to do. Usually there are landing pages. So Dropbox here, they have the line above the call to action and the text inside of the call to action working together perfectly. And never be too let's say, humble when it comes to what you write inside of your CTA. The more information you give, the merrier, right? Instead of writing next, send, post, these kind of silly CTA labels, try to give the user more details. There's nothing wrong with giving the user more details about what will happen next. And in this example, as you can see, it's quite clear. As soon as I click this big chunky blue button, I will start my 30-day trial, right? I already know what's going to happen before I click it. And it's telling the user, hey, this is where you should be looking at, and this is the center of the attention of the page. And again, keep providing details. The more details you provide to your user, the better. And the more you're going to increase the possibilities of not diminishing the reservoir of goodwill, as we talked about it last time. So in this case, this website is perfect. It's not just telling you to add this to the order, but it's telling you the total as well after you add it. And when it comes to CDAs, never be embarrassed to ask for the sale, right? Your CDA is there for a reason, so don't try to hide it. So in this case, we have a website that's asking for a donation somehow, and when you go to that page, most people have this common action. They go to the page, they read the details, and they see, okay, where do I go and donate? They go to the end of the page, and they see nothing. Then they go up again, and then they realize that it's there. I mean, did you even notice it before if you did not really have to look and find it there? It's not asking you to click on it. It's just there, thrown between the elements, and it's not really making much sense. Wouldn't it be better if you've done that? It's bigger, the contrast is clear, it's more noticeable, and it's telling you, once you're done, click on that button and you're going to be on the next page. On the other hand, this website does it perfectly. As soon as you go to the page, they're not embarrassed to ask for your donation. They're asking you for it. In fact, the whole hero banner here is for that button to exist. It's all of the elements that are supporting the action of clicking on that button. It's clear, it's there, and you can definitely not miss it. This is one of our recent websites. It's called Yata Studio. It's launching very soon, so you're one of the exclusive people who are seeing this. But one of the things that we've done here, and as you can see, as soon as you go to the page, the call to actions are clear. Because we wanted only two things from the people who go to that website. Whether to browse our SaaS platforms or to actually click and contact us, which is to work with us on their own SaaS platform. So once you go to the page, you have the menu, which will turn into a sticky menu once you scroll down, and you will always have browse platforms there. It's big, it's noticeable, and you cannot miss it. And also, the banner and the other pages banners, they have call to action so that you can always go back to the top and click on it to do the actions that we want you to do. So, call to actions, and they're quite important for you to know, because once you start knowing these definitions, the way you talk about your designs will be better. The way you talk about it, when you talk about your designs better, the users will understand them better as well. So, your call to actions. It tells the user what they should do, why they should do it, and what happens after. If your call to action is not satisfying at least two of these three, you should reconsider it. Visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy is quite important, and it actually guides the user to what's most important on the page. It tells the user there's a lot of data and content here, but we want you to focus on that first. This is where we want you to focus on, and then the rest of the page is for you to read after we bring your attention to this element. And how do you do that? Going back to the old newspapers, they used to bring your attention to what they want, mainly by contrast. And contrast comes in two ways. Contrast the size. As you can see, in each of these pages, there's this one big element, whether it was the text or the images, the visuals, that they caught your attention as soon as you looked at this newspaper. Or you can do it with color. And that's why soldiers, for example, they wear the camouflage outfit because they want to be hidden. They don't want to be seen. They want the contrast to be as little as possible with their surroundings so that they are invisible. So if you want something to be visible on your website, make it big so it can contrast with other elements, and also make it colorful. Have the contrast quite different between the colors on the page. And Google does this perfectly. And I'm reusing this screenshot from our last presentation because Google is basically showing you all of these features, but with just simple shade of color. They're not just distinguishing between the read and unread emails. They're telling you what you should do, and they're leading to the 3 main use cases that we talked about in our second session, easily by just playing with the contrast of size and color. Yahoo, on the other hand, they did a terrible job doing that. Because what's the element that has the highest contrast? It's an ad. Imagine going to that page and the first thing that you see, what it was on the right, or that purple bar, is an ad. They lost their credibility already, and they did not really help the user navigate and do what they want. Outlook also did not do a really good job. And of course, when we say they did not do a good job, this is in comparison to Gmail and not in comparison to other email providers that can be doing it worse. But here, as you can see, they're not using contrast when it comes to size, when it comes to colors, and the user is just trying to figure out what to do here, right? And it's not hard, but it's definitely easier to compose an email on Gmail than to compose an email here. It will take you probably a couple more seconds to figure it out. So, visual hierarchy basically uses color, contrast, and size. It prioritizes the more important information first, and it prioritizes more common actions, which is the use cases that we talked about. Progress indicators. I mean, the name is quite obvious, and I'm pretty sure you've seen one before. Have you ever seen this when you were shopping on Amazon? This bar at the top, which tells you where you are. So this is called progress indicator. A good progress indicator tells you where you are, how many steps that are left, and what you and it gives you more details in regards to each step. So what does that mean? Here, for example, I know that I completed the welcome first step, and I'm currently on the second step, and I just have 5 more steps to go. How did they do that? With just minimalistic changes. They use color. For example, here, as you can see, the 5 more steps, they are kind of high, like the opacity is not as clear as the first two elements. They've used elements like a checkbox, as you can see at the top as well, to differentiate the steps that are taken and the steps that are to go. And they're, of course, using numbers to show that it's a sequence, right? And you can't just jump from one step to another. This page, however, is not doing it really good. Why do you think? First of all, have we found the progress indicator on this page? You haven't? Exactly. It's these 3 boxes. And they think that the users will understand that by having a blue background, it will represent that you're on this step. And it actually makes sense, but when you have a button that's also blue, it doesn't make sense anymore. It looks like a button that you're about to click, right? So they confuse their users by, instead of putting a clear progress indicator, they've put 3 different buttons, and in this way, they think they're helping the users. However, they're just cluttering the interface and confusing them. A perfect progress indicator would look something similar to this. Again, it's using contrast, the color contrast, to tell the user that you're on the second step. You have 1 more step to go, and you can't really see it because they're using the light gray color, which is perfect, to show them that there's still 1 step that is not done yet. And of course, you can see the checkbox, that step is taken, and they're showing the totals in every step. And that's what I meant by adding more details will always help the user. So progress indicators. It tells the user what they have done what they need to do, and it indicates the time and effort required. Help. You can always design a software that's UX focused and everyone likes to use and nobody gets lost when they use it. But the fact is, users will always need some help, right? Especially if they're using your software for the first time. And if you're not quite sure about how good your UX is, you'll need to have some help out there. Some websites, like Airbnb, they use tooltips. And if you've never heard of tooltips before, it's that small thing that you click on to expand a box of information for you to know about this element, for example. But there is something in the UX world, it's called the 2-click rule, right? And some people invented the 3-click rule, which is don't have the user click more than 2, and some people say more than 3 times to achieve a certain thing. So by having a tooltip, you're actually increasing the route by 1 extra step, and you don't want to do that, right? But if you don't want to do that, and you don't want me to clutter the interface, so how do I do that instead? It can be as simple as that. So this is a banking website, N26. They have a very nice card, and as you can see, under each of the buttons, it's telling you exactly what it should do. And you don't really have to make it that big, that obvious, and even when it comes to the color, don't make it the same color as the other text on your website. You can change the color, make it light gray, for example, just to tell the user, hey, if you actually need some help, look at that part. But if you don't, your eye won't really get cluttered with all of the information. And from the same website, because they knew that some sort of information is quite sensitive, and the users, they need to take extra attention when they're filling them out, they've added that part as well. So it's quite important to add some help for your users. And if you want to go to the next level way of showing or providing help to your users, you can do contextual help. Airbnb, they have perhaps the best way of showing help to their users, which is showing them the information that they need when they need it. So as you can see, while you're going through the process, there's a box on the right that keeps changing based on the context and based on the step that you are in. So it keeps changing based on the first step, the second step, third step, with relevant information that it's not cluttering the interface, and at the same time it's providing great help. So, help. It should be available, but not intrusive, on the interface, and rather than tooltips, and contextual also works well. So, browser options, make sure that you don't clutter the interface, but provide some help, because when it comes to these kind of websites, they know that just a little piece of code, right? Just a little bit of attention will save them a lot of time when it comes to them to users calling the customer support, complaining about their password or about their account details that they want to change. So once they put this extra little bit of help, they know that they're saving a lot of time later on. Validation and error handling. When was the last time you tried to register for an account, and while you're typing the email, for example, the box is just complaining, the email is incorrect, and it's not waiting for you to finish your email first? Some websites do that, right? Exactly. And some websites, they don't even tell you that there's a problem until you submit. And that's crazy. There are some websites until now, they don't do that quite well. MailChimp is the best when it comes to handling errors, right? And doing inline validation. MailChimp have this very simple system that doesn't really require much coding, and it keeps assessing your password while you're writing it, and in a very not annoying way. Because MailChimp knows that if we do that now, we're going to save us a lot of time of people complaining about their forgotten passwords or whatever. So as you can see, once all of the criteria are met, that's when you can go and complete the account registration. It's perfect. Another example, as you can see, show the user the validation as soon as they finish the step before they go to the second one. You fill out the first name, the last name. When you go to the email address, make sure the user know, give them some reassurance that, hey, you're on the right steps, and now you can continue. Don't have them finish all of the steps and then once you sign up, hey, your email is incorrect, and now you have to retype it and then also retype your password. This is horrible user experience. Error handling means what kind of messages are you displaying to your users when such things happen and where. So if, for example, you're not gonna go with our approach and you still wanna display messages, some websites, because they have like a form that's too long, they place the error messages or the error boxes at the end of the page. So if you click on the register or whatever that form button is, it actually refreshes and you have to scroll down to see that error. So this is one of these websites, because at the moment it's a very simple form, but imagine if it was longer and if you just submitted it and it showed you this. You will not see it until you scroll down and you will be quite confused what's happening. So how would you fix this UX problem by one simple trick? Just one simple trick. Sorry? Put it at the top, exactly, or /and. Very simple. I mean, it's quite obvious again because it's a very simple form, but when you have a long form, right, I want my eye to immediately know which fields, which sections I need to readjust. It's quite important. And you know, like what really bothers me as a web designer, all of these things take literally minutes. And I mean, the most complicated one amongst them take you probably an hour of coding. But companies just don't do them, and they just make the website not just really bad UX. They know that people will be complaining, people will have problems using them, people will not really enjoy using them, and they will encounter some issues from time to time, and they still don't fix them. They still don't put this extra couple of minutes, this extra hour on their platforms to make them more usable, even though they know this is the right thing to do it. Maybe they don't. So inline validation and error handling, it reduces errors, increases speed, it makes it clearer where the error occurred, because you're showing the messages and you're also validating the box by changing the border color, and it explains how to resolve the problem. Good websites not just tell the users what's the problem, but it helps them solve the problem as well. This is the last one before we start with our workshop, basically. And this is the most important one, that's why I put it at the end. Progressive disclosure. Progressive disclosure, and you might have guessed from the name, means don't display all of the information all the time to the users. In other words, if you have a form, and now we're going to explain what kind of form, for example, and you want a lot of information from the user, one option would be to put them all under each other like how we recommended and not next to each other. But an even better UX tip is to break them down into steps. Don't give the user more options than what they need to do or fill. And again, this goes back to Hicks' law. The more options you provide, the more time the users will have to spend time on your website or form, whatever. So be progressive, right? Don't present all information all the time, which means, in other words, it reduces complexity, right? Don't make your interface cluttered with options, and only present necessary information when the users need it. This is a list of everything that you would need from someone that's about to book a ticket on your website. You would need their departure airport, arrival airport, departure date, arrival date, departure time, arrival time. Is it a direct flight, or are you open to multi-step flights? The number of passengers, not just that. We also need the name of the passengers. Do you have a check-in luggage or not? The number of checked-in baggage, contact information, perhaps security information. You need to check the terms and conditions and pay at the end. All of that, and Ryanair decided to show you this first, only, right? They know that we do require all of this information from the user. However, let's guarantee that they fill out the most important, very professional, let's just guarantee that we take the most important data from the users first, and then once they proceed to the next step, we take the secondary information, or the less important information, until they reach the end of the tunnel. So break down the steps to your users, and you're going to need this, and I highly recommend you follow this approach in the workshop now. Don't show all the information all the time. Break them down to 2, 3, 4 screens instead of doing one large screen. And what do I mean? For example, if you're designing a mobile app, and this is going to be your task now, for a flight booking app / website, if you really like, but why do we focus on apps? Or perhaps it can be a website that's responsive, right? It's the same at the end. Phones are quite small, right? The screens, no matter how big your phone is, it's going to be small. And if you're going to display lots of information, or if you're going to ask your user for lots of information, this means that they're going to have to scroll a lot. And scrolling is never good when it comes to UX. Plus, when you ask your user for too much at once, they feel like they have to fill out everything before they achieve their first small win. And you don't want that. You want to keep giving your users small wins throughout the process so that they can feel reassured and they feel that they're actually achieving and they're about to reach to their target page. So, progressive disclosure, it prevents information overload, because again, your user barely has 10 or 20 or 40% of the attention whether using your app or website. It helps user make decisions and take actions, and of course, it smoothens the flow. Prototyping. So, we talked about prototyping in our second, and we kind of like mentioned it in our first session. Who knows what's a prototype? Yeah? Cool. So prototypes basically are a way for your team, your design team, development team, the stakeholders to be aligned, to know what's going on with your app or website or software. Everyone knows how it should look like, how it should behave before you get into the expensive business of building it. All of the apps that you see here, the apps that you love, they're not random. They are a result of countless hours and hours and hours of research, prototyping, reiterations and prototyping, reiteration and prototyping. They make sure that their interface is usable to all different kinds of people. And how do they do that? They prototype, and they take this prototype and they go to the user himself, asking them what do they think of this experience before they build it. And that's how you should approach it. Some people think actually it's an additional step, but it really isn't. And that's why you will suffer later on with the success of your app or software, with its usability, with a lot of things that we talked about over the first 2 sessions, just because you haven't done this extra step that will really not take that long. And the point of today's exercise is for you to get started with how can I create prototypes, for you to get familiar with the software, the #1 leading software when it comes to building prototypes, which is Figma. Have you heard of Figma before? Yeah? Perfect. Cool. So there's nothing or not a lot of new information here, rather than you practicing what you've learned over the first 3 sessions.